has some guests with us that I will let him introduce, but we're grateful to have him in our department, and he's been a good influence, as many of you have had him in classes and had other interactions with him. Grateful for him being with us, not only in seminar, but just in our department in general. If you please join me though in welcoming him to our seminar today. We'll Howell, yes, just take it away.
It's her fault that I'm here, just so you know. This is my wife, Lori, and two of our missionaries, Sister Van Hoff, I get used to calling her Allison, and Sister Booth. She actually works with Jason on the seminar. When I first received this call to be mission president, and the members of our ward and state found out, they all said, "We know why you were called, because of your wife." And there's a lot of truth to that. And so I'm very grateful for Lori and her support and help. And we literally were, we both were very, very busy. These were years never to be forgotten. And especially the last year and a half we served during the pandemic. So we're going to share with you some of the mundane, some of the day-to-day, as well as some of the spectacular, as well as some of the spiritual. But in all of this, I want you to remember when I say what President Irene said to both of us. When he extended the call to us in his office, he said, "Both of you, your lives were very carefully scripted for your particular assignment at this time with these particular missionaries in this particular mission." And then he laughingly said, "I hope the missionary department doesn't mess it up." And I don't think either of us realized how prophetic those words were as we were then hit by the pandemic. And I attribute so much of what we did in our mission, and our mission became a pilot mission for the missionary department. No exaggeration, we performed at least 20 pilots in the missionary department. But my training in IP&T, my experience with instructional design, and then as the director of the Center for Teaching and Learning some years ago, really came to play during those 16 months of the pandemic that we served. We were released at the end of June, and the North Dakota Bismarck mission to which we were called was actually the same mission that Russ Osgothorpe was called. It was known then as the South Dakota Rapid City Mission. Many of you know the former department chair and former faculty member of this department, a legend, also had the privilege of serving in the same mission. He's actually headed back to the mission this week. He served not only as the mission president, but then as the temple president to the Bismarck Temple. And he told us at a social earlier this week that he'll be there visiting the temple and some of the people, friends they met in North Dakota. So we'll go ahead, and my wife, and we'll make this somewhat informal. You're welcome to ask questions throughout. Don't wait till the end. And we'll share with you our journey and our experience and show you how we put to work some of these skills we learned in IP&T. Hey, Maureen, do you want to go ahead?
On your laptop.
Oh, use the laptop. Mouse better though. Okay, go ahead, sweetheart. Introduce them generally to the mission.
Okay, this was our mission. It's the largest geographical mission in the United States.
In the lower 48, the contiguous. Yeah.
Contiguous.
Who
And
drew this, by the way?
I did this.
My wife's an artist. She teaches art at Salt Lake
I
Community
teach
College.
calligraphy. I love calligraphy. So we had all of North Dakota, a large portion of South Dakota, just a little bit of Sioux City, Sioux Falls, I mean, is right here that we don't have. A part of Minnesota, a nice size of Montana, and just a little sliver, you don't see all of it, of Nebraska. So it was, we had the beautiful forested lake area of Minnesota all the way down to the badlands, the grasslands of Nebraska, badlands out into Montana.
How come you don't have a line representing the time zone?
We had a big time zone that ran straight through the mission and down here, which meant, especially when COVID hit and we had to do Zoom, we had Central Time and Mountain Time.
It was
So we had to
fine
take
until
it
the
really
pandemic.
changed us, our life, because we would have to do 2 of everything or the time changed. It was just, yeah, anyway.
We made a
This is our
recommendation
site.
to the missionary department that now that missions have gone more online, that you not have missions with different time zones. And tell them what that caused you to do in the morning. with your sisters?
Well, when COVID hit, mental health tanked a little bit. They were stuck inside and I like to exercise.
That's the psychology part of IP&T.
I like to exercise, so I got up and we would exercise at 7 and then I would do it again at 8 so that it was 7 o'clock mountain time. So I did it twice a day, got in the best shape of my life, and I sort of wished I had these sisters to do it with again because it made me force me to get up and do it. So
Very good. Okay. The PowerPoint. I had to throw this picture in. The country we traveled was vast. It was really the heart of farmland in really North America. The Dakotas were the #1 suppliers and providers of many crops. Wheat, barley, honey, cattle. In North Dakota, there were in South Dakota, there were 4.3 cattle per person. And in North Dakota, it was 2.3 cattle per person. We were just slightly over 1 million inhabitants, and there were only 5 states. When I first came, there was a district. Within a year, I worked with the brethren to dissolve that district and absorb them in neighboring states. We have less than 5,000 active members of the church that cover this vast area. And when President Hinckley dedicated the temple in 1999, we referred to this as being the frontier of the church. It very much was so. A lot of small cities and a lot of farmers, a lot of farm country, a lot of people that had never, ever heard of our church. No idea it even existed. We were able to do things because of the pandemic that we would not have done otherwise. We got into small towns and areas, met people that we would never have met otherwise. And we'll tell you more about that. But that's me. The field is white, all ready to harvest. And I should have put a picture of the sunflowers. Dear, tell them about the sunflowers.
oh, sunflowers in July, end of July, 1st of August, you can see sunflowers for as far as just like that, just beautiful big sunflowers. It's the #1 producer of sunflowers, seeds and sunflower oil, the 2 Dakotas are, and it's every missionary has their obligatory picture with the sunflowers, don't they?
You all know that the sunflower follows the sun.
Until it gets too heavy.
Until it gets too heavy. But just a reminder to us to follow the sun. Talk about the pandemic, will you, sweetheart?
Okay, so we all know about the pandemic because it affected every one of us. In North Dakota, it was very mild. March, April, May, June, July, August. Nobody took it seriously. Most of the people didn't wear masks. We didn't go to church from April and May, but 1st of June, we started back to church in the Dakotas because the numbers are so low. And the area presidency looks at where the numbers are. But by October, we made the New York Times because we became the #1 COVID per capita, per 100,000. We were leading
We
everybody.
didn't count the cows.
Yeah, I just generally believe it just took that long because North Dakota is not exactly a destination city. It's their place. And yes, Dakota, Mount Rushmore is a very big tourist place, but it just didn't spread until October. And so October, November, we kind of shut down. And that was the first time we really felt the effects in the Dakotas. I mean, there was a little bit, someone here in this branch or someone in that branch, little bits, but the numbers were so low in North and South Dakota, Montana, that it just was very, it wasn't a big deal for us other than we had the lockdowns and we couldn't go out as missionaries and,
But as the
And
New York
half of
Times
them-
reporter said, how perilously close we are in North Dakota to the edge.
yeah.
Go ahead, next.
But we made it through that part quickly. And
Show
there's
some
the,
numbers.
see, there it is. Okay. So that was this was us. We hit it in October.
So on March 16th, the missionary department came out with this official letter to general authorities, mission presidents, so forth, temporary changes to missionary service. And I'll just have my wife, well, actually, I'll have you, Allison. Why don't you go ahead and read this next slide? This is what we're going to just emphasize from that long letter they sent me.
So they said in missions where missionaries will work primarily from their apartments, they will continue to focus on the missionary purpose by teaching using technology, studying the scriptures and preach my gospel, language learning, family history, online community service, and other activities identified by the mission president. This is a significant opportunity for missionaries to work closely with local church leaders to reach out to new and returning members, families where some individuals are not yet members, and members with special ministering needs. These missionaries will continue to go outside for exercise and fresh air while observing wise guidelines for personal contact.
So on the next slide, my wife will share with you kind of the new schedule they created for us during the pandemic.
So if anybody's familiar with the original one, I mean, oh my goodness, we had watch a movie. It's like, what? And we went outside twice a day. They had to get an hour of outside time. They could work on family history. It was just way different than what it was. Our go outside time in March and April. It's still pretty cold in the Dakotas. It gets cold there. But we had just, do you want me to talk about Billion Graves or not? My husband had just barely, the year before, he tried to get an app approved for Billion Graves, where our missionaries could take pictures, upload them, they go to family
Headstones.
search. The headstones, pictures of headstones. We got turned down, and so in January, I thought, I'm gonna try it again, new area, so I was gonna try it. And they approved it, and so it was a real blessing, because the missionaries on their outside time and or service things, they were able to go and upload all the cemeteries, or not all of them, but a large majority of the cemeteries in the Dakotas, take the pictures of the headstones, upload it to Billion Graves, and then it goes on to the family search. And we managed to get a lot of press out of that.
Yeah, I told the missionaries during this time, everybody was shut down, and we, they said, fine, online community service, give me a break. What online community service can you really find? I mean, and so we were very fortunate that we were able to keep our missionaries outside during this difficult time doing service. They had to be physically distanced from everybody. Their phones,
Pretty much
their
are in
cameras,
cemeteries.
yeah, and the cemetery headstones were the place. And billiongraves.com picked up on what we were doing. They were watching the numbers. What's going on in the Dakotas? This tremendous upload of photos of headstones. And they then called and interviewed me, and they did like a 15-page article. You can go to billiongraves.com right now, and under the blog, do a search for missionaries, and you'll see the North Dakota Bismarck Mission featured. And then it started spreading what we were doing in the NDBM, call it, with the headstones and the service for the dead and the living. He began to spread across all the missions. And so we felt like the Lord really used us and our area presidency in this Billion Graves as an opportunity for our missionaries to stay sane while also doing service. And then I told the missionaries, I said, the scriptures talk a lot about publishing peace. I said, every time you go into a town and have a cemetery recorded and the headstones captured and uploaded to the cloud, I want you to talk to the local press. And the local press was so desperate for some good news in the midst of all of this discouraging news. And I don't think we were turned down once. And so our missionaries doing this service are represented in about 100 small town newspapers, something besides the livestock auction and the pandemic. And lots of questions, lots of righteous curiosity. Go ahead, sweetheart, I'll tell you now what started happening.
Okay, so in April, end of March, April, some we did have to send home if they had any, diabetes or some kind of conditions like that. And we sent a lot of asthma home. We didn't need to. In retrospect, I feel badly about that. But and then a few just that didn't think they could make it through the pandemic. So our numbers dropped.
Our seniors too.
And all of our seniors, that's right. We have had 12 sets of seniors because we have reservations on and they all had to go back. And then and all the international missionaries have come home. And so reassignment started the 1st of May. And we started, so from May to the end of July, we ended up getting 122 missionaries exactly. And they were coming in every week, anywhere between 8 to 16 we'd get in every week. I did find out other missions were getting them every 3 weeks or 6 weeks. It was only because that was the box they checked. My husband just said, oh, send them when you need to. It about killed us off there for a while. But that
He
meant.
still hasn't forgiven.
That meant we had to get apartments and cars and apartments, furnished.
Sometimes hotels and rental cars too.
Yes, just to accommodate the number of missionaries came
These
in.
are all internationals that were pulled from their missions and reassigned to
And
the States.
so many different languages and that they were coming back from. And so we all of a sudden, the Dakotas had a bunch of different language things and, people that could speak these languages. And we're able to, did an article on that, tried to find places where there were,
So we were telling
Filipinos
the press, the media everywhere about this. They were intrigued. I
so
mean, some of these
anyway,
languages had
it
never been
was
in the Dakotas.
43 countries and 88 missions came to our mission, were reassigned. Average time was about 8 months. And they were a great blessing to our mission. And the other thing, they were a great blessing when they went back because we trained them. My husband sent them all through a boot camp that Sister Van Allison and Echo and everybody taught them what we had learned. So they could go back to these countries where they were first getting their smartphones. See, we got our smartphones in May of 2018, and then we went out in July of 2018. Nobody really knew how to use smartphones.
The last words of the
called them
outgoing mission president, I'm so glad you get to deal with missionaries and phones.
And we asked the mission department, so how do they use their phones? And they go, well, they use them to find people. And we would say, how? And they go, well, they'll know how. But nobody knew how. And the missionaries did once we were stuck inside. Once forced to learn how to use these devices, we did. And so when these missionaries would return back to their missions, they returned back able to help their missions and their mission presidents.
Almost every one of our international missionaries that went back to their original assignments helped lead the social media efforts of their mission. So we felt like that was really one of the roles the Lord had for our mission at this time. And I have 2 more slides, just quickly run through those. And then Allison needs to, so this shows you the different states from which these international missionaries joined us. And the next slide. These are some of the original mission assignments where they came from. We obviously prepared these infographics for the media and for public communications. I'm going to let you just take a few minutes, Allison, and share with this body some of your insights, some of your perspective. You were there before and during the pandemic. You were one of our lead social media missionaries. She especially probably led the church in using Instagram. Facebook was really the only social media app that had been approved for missions. But she and a few other missionaries were just relentless. They just bugged me to death. And I said, Hal, you've got to let us use Instagram. The young people don't care, don't use Facebook as much. So she really was a champion and an advocate, and she really, one of the heads of the missionary department actually spent a few hours with her and the others, and she was an instrument in helping introduce Instagram as well as Facebook to missionary work. So share with them some of your story and journey.
So when I first entered the mission field, COVID wasn't a thing. I served for about 5 months before the pandemic hit. And so watching the whole transition happen, things affected us where I had to leave my area because I was serving on a Native reservation. But once I got to a different area, that's when we started using Instagram, which is what I was using. All the missionaries had Facebook access on their phone. And so we're all trying to figure out how to find people to teach and how we're going to actually use it, like the mission department said, to find people. But when I started using Instagram, we had a few of us who were on it.
And I had to give special permission, and I had to get special permission. And so it was only a few missionaries had it, and it was mostly sisters. There aren't as many filters with Instagram. So.
It's a bit more dangerous, but it's miraculous. We saw so many miracles come from it. At first, we had no idea what we were doing. Same with Facebook. We kind of had to just figure it out as we went along. But we were very fortunate that we would connect with other missions and with people from the missionary department, and we would share, little tidbits and information that we had found out. But most of all, we had to just learn through trial and error. I think about a month into having the app is when we found one of the first people to teach from Instagram.
I have his picture later on. Joseph, right?
He used Facebook, actually.
Oh, Facebook.
Yeah.
Oh,
He was through a Facebook ad.
okay.
But it was around that same time. And as we started finding people to teach, we realized that it was a whole new ballgame. We weren't
talking with them in person, but instead we were messaging them, and then we were video calling them, or we were sending them videos teaching small principles of the gospel. And we saw that we were reaching an audience that was never before touched. There were the young single adults who are all over the world, but especially in the mission, who, they didn't have Facebook. So if we were on Facebook, we couldn't really find them. That's where they thought their parents would go for their social media. And talking out in person, we wouldn't necessarily be able to connect with them. But because we were on such a app that was their audience, that was their go-to, we were able to connect with college age students. One of my areas was on a college university campus, and we found more people to teach there through Instagram than through any other means. And it was really awesome. There were people that we invited to be baptized through it. And it was cool too, as we started to see the pandemic let up a little bit. Those video calls could then change to in-person interactions, as long as we were still wearing our masks and distancing. And the spirit that was felt when you were finally meeting with someone in person for the first time, after only have ever talked to them through the internet, is one of the most special things in the world.
No, thank you. I'm gonna let you take a minute or two now.
Oh.
Just your perspective. Thank you, Allison. And these really, President and Elder Uchtdorf called these young missionaries pioneers. And you're literally meeting two of the pioneers. The general authority in the area presidency that toured our mission said that in the Saints, the 20th volume of Saints, that these missionaries will be featured. They really did revolutionize the way we do missionary work. And it was not a temporary stopgap. This is now the new permanent way of doing missionary work, I mean, in addition to the other methods. I'll let you go to your class and go ahead.
Okay.
Just talk for a minute about your perspective.
Yes. So
You were not in the social media, you were not our social media team.
not for Instagram, no.
But you were at the zone level for Facebook.
Facebook, yeah. Yeah. So I didn't do nearly as much as Allison did, but I loved everything that she had to say. It was all like so true. And I just loved how when it came to teaching in the pandemic, there really was like, it was an adjustment to like, I don't know, just realize that it pretty much is the same thing, just on technology, and like figuring out how we can apply the same principles to that missionary work, like virtually. And then when it came to teaching, you could still feel the spirit just as strong through an online like video chat with someone, like even just messaging them, the spirit was the same. And it was really incredible, just the blessing of having this technology. And like, I remember there's a quote, I think it's from President Hinckley, that talks about how like we do not know like how much this technology is like going to bless us. And it was like from the 90s, like it was from decades ago. And just talking about how the technology was going to play such a major role in the gathering of Israel. And we really saw that like come to fruition as we were in the pandemic, because we could do way more missionary work in the Dakotas than we ever could without technology. Because
you mentioned too how we were able to invite and include members more than ever. You know, that they didn't drive up in their car and get babysitters and find that the person wasn't there, but they were able to join us.
Yeah, I think that was the best part, was there was a lot less guilt if people bailed on the lessons. We could have our members either make a video like separately, and then we could share that video with the person that we're teaching, or it could just be as simple as hopping onto a Zoom lesson with us. And if they're late, then it's not like they drove 20 minutes out of their way, because nothing is close in North Dakota. You have to drive out of your way to go to a lesson. And in the winter, when it's like -20 or even colder outside, then you feel bad for making them come out in the cold and leave their families. But with that, it was so much easier. And then we could even have them, just as simple things that we can still do now as members, is just share content from the church or the content that we were producing as missionaries on their Facebook or social media sites, or just even casually with their friends through a conversation with like, oh, I just was reading this and I thought of you, and sharing that easily with them was also a great way to involve our members. And so we were getting so much more participation, and we could reach so many more people than we could before because of this technology. And our work was just like so blessed. Like I'm sure you'll go on to talk about the miracles that we saw through our missionary work, and that really, we can't stop. It's incredible.
Go ahead, just take a little bit more on that. We'll talk about the puny arm and
Oh,
one
yeah.
held hand and how many convert baptisms we witnessed.
Yeah, and like, obviously, we're not like Brazil where we're baptizing, I don't even know, probably thousands of people. But in the Dakotas, I feel like the miracles that we saw were even, just more incredible because we treasure them so much more. And the 2 previous years without COVID, there were like 180 baptisms. And the year that we were in COVID, the majority of the year that we were in COVID, we reached the same amount of baptisms, which was a really big miracle for us because the first like 3 months we were like on record, we were like getting more baptisms than we ever had in the past. And then like we were still kind of going through with COVID when it hadn't really hit us that hard. We were still getting those numbers. And then as the pandemic really hit us, that's when we started to struggle a little bit. But then at the end of the year, we were figuring out technology and how to involve that in our missionary work and using the Spirit to really guide us.
And the members.
And the members especially. Like we can't do the work without the members because you guys are the people who live there and
Have the friends
Yeah.
and
have those relationships way better than we can. And
so
so
but tell about no puny arm.
yeah, and it's even more special that the Missouri River runs right through North Dakota. And really like seeing that river just was so inspiring when it comes to the Doctrine and Covenant quote where I don't remember the exact.
Just
reference,
no
I'm sure.
puny arm.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lori.
Yeah.
No puny arm can stop the Missouri River in its decreed course or send it upstream to stop the Almighty from pouring out knowledge on the saints. So, and he did, he told us how to do it. And it
So
didn't
whenever we
stop
brought
the
new
work.
missionaries into to Bismarck, we drive by the Missouri and say, okay, now go put your hand out there and stop that river in its decreed course, will you? Yeah, not going to happen. The work goes on. And a lot of us are familiar with Joseph Smith Wentworth's letter, no unhallowed hand, and we say a no puny arm in our mission. So it could stop the work. Again, she's a pioneer. You're awesome. Okay, let's fly through. We've got a lot to cover in 15 minutes. So don't mind just moving us forward. How many of you have seen this? Okay, one of you. Go ahead and read that, sweetheart, will you?
I will teach you in a room. I will teach you now on Zoom. I will teach you in a house. I will teach you with my mouth. I will teach you here or there. I will teach you because I care. Different notes and send this to us.
This came from our area president. I'm not sure where he got it, but I still laugh and smile. And there it is. There's our mission. Some of most of one page of our missionaries. We lived on Zoom, as many of you did. We taught on Zoom. We had our conferences. We had our district councils. We had our mission leadership councils. I got so sick and tired of looking at my screen, and it was actually a big challenge for our missionaries spending so much time on a little screen. That was a topic of discussion, what we could do to make sure that they didn't lose their eyesight and their sanity.
Or just their neck.
Okay, next. This is our social media team. We met all the time. And so this is how we kind of organized it. This was our Facebook companionship. They led Facebook. This was our analytics and training. These were our advertising missionaries. These were our Instagram missionaries. And she was kind of our, our chair of the group and played multiple roles. So, but this group also did a lot of our content creation. We create a lot of stuff. I felt like I was back at CID CTL in our heyday. We had 100 students doing multimedia creation, and we were doing all kinds of creation, little videos, graphics, and so forth. We'll show you a few examples of that. Now, how many of you have heard of EdApp? Okay. So this was, the missionary department will tell you this was a godsend. This was a miracle. This is a company that has created micro lessons, a framework to deliver. And just as the pandemic hit, the missionary department was about ready to release this. They had to advance their schedule a little bit. But this became very important to our missionaries in those early months of the pandemic. Next slide will show you. So they ended up with about 23 lessons, and using social media to find, using technology to find, using technology to teach, doing good online, overview. And the church also, while I was out there, turned on Tableau, for those of you that don't know Tableau. And I was able to have a dashboard of reports that really had not been available before. Next screen. Next slide. Next. Okay, some of these interesting prophecies I'm just going to run through very quickly and go ahead and do it again. This particular prophecy was made by David O. McKay. I was, I guess, 6 years old at this time. But he said, modern inventions will stagger the imagination with untold possibilities. Next. Lori, what's your?
I believe that the Lord is, well, when the world will be
This
converted.
is 1974.
I believe that the Lord is anxious to put into our hands inventions of which we laymen have hardly had a glimpse. Using all the latest inventions and equipment and paraphernalia already developed and that which will follow, can you see that perhaps the day may come when the world will be converted and covered? If we do all we can, and I accept my own part of that responsibility, I am sure the Lord will bring more discoveries to our use. And you can see where the church could reach every nation, kindred, clime, tongue, because through social media, they can go places where we don't even have boots on the ground.
This is what one of our sisters wrote.
On October 7th, one of our sisters wrote, I continue to be blown away by the miracles available through technology. All the people we found through Instagram and Facebook are people I know wouldn't have been found otherwise. This is definitely the Lord's tool for getting the gospel into every corner of the earth. Fulfilled.
And just a couple more quotes here. Elder Bednar in 2015, I believe the time has come for us as disciples of Christ to use these inspired tools appropriately and more effectively. Next. 5 years later, Elder Uchtdorf chaired the Missionary Executive Council. And if any of you will remember when President Nelson released Elder Uchtdorf as a member of the presidency, he said that he has been preserved by the Lord for a very special assignment. And he was immediately given the missionary department. And so his time before the pandemic was about a year or so, but he was clearly prepared to help all of the world and the church and missionaries through the pandemic. And he said, we might have been so tied to traditional approaches that it took a pandemic to open our eyes. And I actually have an article in for review that talks about some of the fulfillment of prophecies made by Elder Uchtdorf, statements he made, and line them up with some of the earlier statements from David O. McKay and others. Go ahead. Go ahead, sweetheart.
Our goal for the, okay, no worries. Our goal. Okay, our goal for the future is to continue to learn and become better at using the internet to proclaim the gospel and to bless God's children. Gift of tongues, there you go.
Yeah, now this is, Howell 1-on-1. We all know the importance of gift of tongues for missionary work. Go ahead and advance to the next screen. I came to really feel very strongly that the missionaries in our mission were asked to learn another language. And it wasn't Portuguese, wasn't Spanish, wasn't Russian, like our daughter's learning right now. It was social media, the language of social media. And we all know that social media is developed and written and produced and delivered in languages, computer languages, PHP and others. So our missionaries, we prayed for the gift of tongues applied to using social media. God give us the ability to speak in the language of technology, the language of social media, just like you would help us with our foreign language. One of the first things that we started doing, and we probably should have done this even earlier, but like Elder Uchtdorf said, it took the pandemic for us to move the church in this direction. We brought the big corporate institutional comeintoChrist.org webpage to the local communities, to the local members. Instead of having this, institutional look, we now made it very localized, very personal. And so missionaries and members teamed up, and we created, in almost all missions, started creating these local church Facebook pages. So in essence, it was bringing the big corporate comeintoChrist.org on Facebook to Minot, to Williston, to Rapid City, to Bismarck, to the bigger cities and communities. So this is the one in the Dakota Plains. You can see we have missionaries and members together. This is down in Rapid City, the Black Hills. We had one for the Native Americans. We had, I think, as many as 9. And we started from 0 followers. And when we left, we were up to 28,000. And a lot of these are non-members in the local community. And the members owned it. It was their people. It was them on video, in pictures. And they were sharing the messages that were coming through with their friends on their friend list. Go ahead. Yeah.
You said the members owned it. Does that mean that like within each of the wards and the stakes, there was a designated social media?
Our mission was, kind of ahead of the curve there. I worked with the stake presidents and the bishops, and we had each of the wards call an online ward member missionary. So, and we trained them too. And so it was a partnership. The missionaries really started it. We brought the members in as quickly as we could. We finally had one member say, I'm taking over this page. Our ward's taking over this page, which was awesome, as long as we work closely together. But here's Minot, North Dakota. And I told you we create all kinds of content. I had missionaries that came to us with some video background and training and scripting and photography experience. And we sent them around the mission. And in this one local church Facebook page alone, in the time we were there, they created 143 videos. We tried as much as possible to make member videos because the local community would relate to the members, not to us come and go missionaries. Next one. Williston. Just again, missionaries, member family, number of people we reached in just a month period. We really began to learn and understand how to use Facebook, ad manager and Facebook business. Go ahead, next slide.
I was watching myself on this.
And so this shows you all of our pages and the number of friends and followers. And one of the things that we really attacked big time was our response time. I hate to confess, but in our early months of doing this, the average response time was 6 hours. And so this is to somebody at post as well as to maybe responses to some ads. But by the time we left, we had it down to 20 minutes.
Average, but we had some zones.
We had some zones that had it down to a couple of minutes. So
And it was because we started measuring it though. Without measuring it,
performance is measured.
so every week we saw these numbers and each zone would say, oh, we can do better. And then they did. They got all better.
And it makes a big difference. Timing on responsiveness is really critical in social media. Okay, go ahead. And then one of the things that I really got to know the talents and interests and skill sets of the missionaries. I'll show you a quick spreadsheet. And one of the things, I had a really talented programmer come to me from the Japanese international missionaries, and he had done a lot of programming. And I said, we've got to find a more efficient way to find out who's interacting with our pages. Is there any way you can tie into the API and develop some code for us? And so I brought him into the office, and day and night he worked and coded and created what we call the Page Interaction Manager, which has now spread. He told me the other day at the reunion, I think now 60 missions are now using this. But this allowed us to quickly find out what was happening to anybody that interacted with our pages. Okay, next. This is our dashboard that was provided through Tableau. Next. And we started doing more and more activities and events with the community. There are non-members, members, I think 1 or 2 missionaries. This is our only missionary. We started doing virtual choirs. We were actually invited with some of our virtual choirs to participate in an international competition, a chorale. And so our missionaries were performing. We were invited to perform at the Temple Square Concert Series last year with one of our virtual choirs. It takes a lot of work, a lot of technology, and a lot of programming to put these together. We, again, use the talents of our local members. This is a professor of guitar at Chadron State in Nebraska. And he did a wonderful performance as well as taught a gospel topic. And then we would circulate these in our Facebook and Instagram pages and encourage the members to share it with their friends. Go ahead. And then the church really went wild and crazy. They actually gave us a budget for doing advertising ads. And since we were way ahead of the learning curve and nobody else was spending their money, I started spending everybody else's money. And we far exceeded our budget, but we got really good at doing ads and inviting local members of the community to join us. So keep on going. It's quite sophisticated and complicated. And we started looking at Google Trends and others to do our ads. Go ahead, keep on going. For the time we gotta. These are all the tools we used. We started doing Instagram, or the first mission in the church to do Google ads. Google ads are a lot less expensive. These are some of our ads that we created. We were able to determine how responsive they were. These are all our missionaries acting. Except this one. Okay. Next one. And this is our first person that joined the church as a result of a Facebook ad. And Joseph, he told us we would never have found him any other way. And this was the story of many of these people that we were able to see enter into the baptismal water. And next one. That was another one of our first. Next one, Instagram. And then we innovated. One of the things that during the pandemic, nobody would take our pass along cards because of the fear that we might be spreading the virus. And so our missionaries came up with, let's start using QR codes. And we went crazy with QR codes, and they were just dynamite. It just was a novelty to a lot of people to take their phone and go immediately to our Facebook page, or to the church page, or to the Tabernacle Choir or Family History. So we had a great deal of success with this. They just put them on their phones. So as we contacted with people either over Zoom or, with our mask and distance, oh, here, just put your camera up against, they would make it usually their cover, a QR code. And we're able to then take them to our Facebook and Instagram pages. Next.
Did you have like missionaries in charge of graphic design?
Yes.
There's a lot of stuff here.
Yes. Again, whenever the Lord sent me a missionary with a particular talent, I took that as a message from heaven that I was supposed to use that talent. And one of the real gifts from heaven was an SEO missionary. Came to me from Hawaii, search engine optimization. I didn't even let him get trained. I put him into the office immediately. And one of his apps had 14,000 downloads its first day. He was very successful, quite well to do, very socially backward, but very, very talented. And we were able to bring our meeting houses and our pages, we were able to lift them to sometimes #1 in local searches. Okay, I passed this one. We did some really fancy stuff with new move-ins. Keep on going. We got really big into Google Maps, Google Reviews, and search engine optimization. And it was a long story. I could take another hour to tell you, but we were the only mission that got permission to take pictures of our chapels. My wife could tell you the story, but it's a fun story. But we started building out the meeting houses. We got permission from the stake presidents to use our missionary numbers. We did Q&As. We were able to put Book of Mormon and addiction recovery manuals and others on each of the meeting house Google pages. And then our team started working almost on a weekly basis with headquarters. They used us and are still using us to help prepare for the day to scale this to all missions. Okay, keep on going. There's our Bismarck Church, and then this is a picture of the chapel. And then I allowed myself and a few other missionaries became Google reviewers. I'm now level 7, 10 million, but we did that so that we could counter the negative reviews. So Google will not pay any attention to some anti-Mormon that puts up a negative review on your meeting house. And I hope you all take time to go look at your meeting house. But when they found some of us high-level reviewers disputing, then they took it down almost immediately. So that was one of the things we did, is we tried to get the ratings up, we tried to remove the anti-Mormon stuff. They keep on going. Yep, that's where I'm at right now. SEO, #1, keep on going. These are our products. And all of these pictures that I have with missionaries with their tags. Go back to the one before. This thing went crazy in Bemidji, Minnesota, when I took pictures of our missionaries up at the woolen mills. And I don't know how many tens of thousands of people have not only viewed that picture of Bemidji woolen mills, but looked at our missionaries. Okay, go ahead. Keep on going. Run out of time, sweetheart. So keep on going. My wife had a lot to do with exercise and social media. Part of the helping them through this time was finding out what they're good at, what they like, what their interests were, and using their talents. Keep on going. Just we're almost done. They did some crazy stuff with their talents. This video went viral. One of our missionaries that created a picture of the Savior using jelly beans. And it was time lapse. Keep on going. Our virtual choirs, go next. A performance with some very talented vocalist members and one of our missionaries right in the shadow of Mount Rushmore. Keep on going. We did create a YouTube channel and mostly just to archive all of our content. You're welcome to go to it and subscribe if you'd like. It's Walk with Christ, North Dakota. Okay, keep on going. Yep, we're done. Well, yeah, let's not worry about that. We had a wonderful experience. We really felt the Lord's hand, and clearly the technology that's been given to us in our day and time is for a purpose. And it includes, maybe especially includes, helping spread the good news of the gospel to all people. So thank you for allowing us to share a little bit of our experience there in the field. And I'm very grateful for the training that IP&T gave me years ago, and then through the years as an administrator. Those talents and that experience really came to play during the mission. So thank you.
We're grateful for Scott, Lori, his wife, Echo, and Allison, who shared their experiences with us. Very not just technologically innovative, but just creative in a very basic sense as well. We'll be back again next week for another seminar. Let's go grab something to eat and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.